In this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of step-by-step how to respond to a construction tender. We'll talk about the steps you can follow, but also the strategies you can put in place to help you win more profitable work. This video is targeted for anybody in the construction industry in the work winning phase of the project, but specifically subcontractors looking at winning work from general contractors. But if you're a general contractor, particularly the smaller ones, you could use these same processes and principles. And the video is targeted really at construction business owners, but also other industry professionals. And my goal by the end of this video is to have given you some strategies and help you understand the process so you can win more profitable work. Because that's ultimately what you're trying to do when you're tendering work. You're trying to find projects, secure them at a price you can deliver them profitably. So you don't want to just win a whole lot of work at a cost that you're going to lose money on. You have to find projects and win them at a price you can comfortably deliver them. If we break this down a little bit further in terms of metrics, what is good construction tendering look like for a business? So they have a high win rate, which means they secure greater than 30% of the projects they chase. They have low bid costs, so they don't spend too much tendering work. So typically, I'd say less than 1% of the contract value for what you're looking for. And you're securing jobs at a price you can then deliver them profitably. So you're not winning work and then losing money on it. You're winning projects that you can make your tendered margin on. So specifically, we're going to look at how you can win more profitable work by breaking down the procurement process, by talking about how clients choose contractors. This is really important to understand when you're ever framing an offer or framing a response. You need to be very aware of how clients choose contractors. Then we'll talk about the steps to follow to respond to a tender. And then finally, we'll finish off with some strategies you can use. Just quickly about me, my name's Tim. I run an outsourced construction services company, and our goal is to help small to medium-sized construction business owners who are busy to free up some of their time by outsourcing some of these tasks and processes so you can focus on the stuff that's actually growing and helping your business. I want to start off by going through the procurement process from the perspective of one of your clients. So we'll go through the steps that they go through when they have a package of works that they need a contractor for to eventually awarding the contract. So we're going to go through this, how it is meant to happen. So how it happens in theory. So it starts off with client deciding they need a contractor for something. So say it's a general contractor building a bridge and they need a concreting company to do the concrete foundation. So they'll prepare a tender package and they'll define exactly what they want to procure. So they prepare a package with the drawings, the specifications, the bill of quantities, and a draft form of the contract. They then issue this tender package to the market. So they'll have chosen some pre-qualified contractors who meet their safety objectives, contractors they've worked with before, and then they'll send them this tender package so they can quote on it. And they'll also go through a period of questions or RFIs. So when the subcontractors like yourselves start looking at these drawings and specifications, you obviously start to have questions or gaps. You'll then prepare your quotes, submit your quotes and your offer. The head contractor will go through some sort of assessment process. They'll do some sort of bid leveling. So when subcontractors exclude scope, they'll add in money for this, or they'll either get you to reprice it. And then they'll choose the best value for money contractor. So the subcontractor they perceive is offering the most value for the best price. They'll then negotiate and award the contract. So they'll go through this process of resolving any of these gaps, negotiating the contract, going through any departures, and then signing a contract and giving them a notice to proceed. In theory, it's a very step-by-step process that is cut and repeat for every tender package. In practice, it's way more messier than that. What generally happens is when a general contractor is starting to tender for work for their own projects, they need pricing from subcontractors. Often they've got a very basic preliminary information and design. So they send out a tender package to subcontractors, they get pricing back, and then they go back and forward 20 times to work out what quote they should include in their own estimate. They then win the contract, they progress the design a bit more and progress their planning a bit more, and then they send out an official tender package. So what happens is usually between that tender and issue stage. You go through about 5 rounds of pricing. Then when an official tender package comes out, they go through another 5 rounds of pricing because they're asking for revisions. They want to take scope in and out. The quotes they get back are too high from the market. And they basically go through this massive cycle of optioneering before finally choosing someone who almost certainly is the cheapest subcontractor and then negotiating the contract. Ultimately, clients, so if you're a trade contractor, these are general contractors, or if you're a general contractor, these are the project developers, they almost always choose contractors based on price. This is an unfortunate reality of the construction industry, that the procurement processes we use basically commoditize what people offer because we're so prescriptive in defining what we want. For example, if we're building a bridge, we want a concreting company that supplies and installs the concreting, that does these 2 foundations, that they also do the excavation, and they allow for 2 mobilizations of the site. Because we specify exactly what we want, when we're getting quotes in, basically all we're doing is comparing and contrasting who has the cheapest price. And so it's really, construction becomes a commoditized service. And if we've got more sophisticated or mature clients or complicated scopes, then you might get more of a non-dollar value check. So they'll prioritize other things. But ultimately, the person who's usually signing off on approving to award a contract at your clients is going to be some high-level manager who's really far removed from the actual work. They don't really know your company. They don't know what you do. They don't know why you guys are better. They're really just going to be signing off on a dollar figure. And it is just an unfortunate reality of the construction sector that it's just a highly commoditized industry. How do you respond to a tender? Well, basically responding to a tender occurs in 3 key steps. You've got to review the documentation that's been submitted. You've got to prepare an estimate, and then submit it to the client. It's really as simple as that. And in this video, I'm not going to cover estimating, but I'll put a link in the video description to a free training course we have on construction estimating. But really, preparing a submission is as simple as that. You're reviewing the client documentation, you prepare your estimate, which might also include a methodology, any procurement you have to do, and a schedule, and then you submit it to the client. How do you then win a tender? Well, the easiest way is just to offer the lowest possible price. Clients, as I've said, are very focused on the price you submit. So if you're submitting the lowest possible price, you're almost always going to be selected. The second thing you should do is you should convince the client that your offer best suits their needs. Now, depending on how much the client actually knows what they're looking for, this is going to be increasingly difficult. You've got to understand what they're looking for, what the requirements of the projects are, show them that you can meet their quality and safety requirements, and that you offer additional value in your proposal. So winning a tender really comes down to 2 things: offering the lowest possible price and convincing the client that you meet their needs for the project. Okay, so now we're going to go through those 3 steps of how to respond to a tender in more detail. The first thing you need to do when responding to a construction tender is to understand the context behind the project. So what you really want to work out is it actually a real project, or is your client still in a tender or a feasibility stage? Basically, what you want to work out is the project actually going to be going ahead? And at the end of this quoting process, so when you submit your quote to them, are they actually in a position to award the contract? Because if they're just pricing the project to their client, then they're not actually going to be able to award the contract till they get the go ahead from their client, which may be some months or years away. You also want to understand things like, is the client rushed? Are they rushing to get a contractor? And what do they want? Do they even know what they want? Are they really focused on program? Are they really focused on your technical solution? And are they open to alternatives? So for example, if they're not really clear on what they're asking for, would they be open to different alternatives? And then you also want to get a feel of, is the job a good fit for your business? You want to chase work that you actually want to do. If you're working with, say you don't do remote work, but the project's in the middle of nowhere, there's all these certain risks and challenges with working on remote work, then do you really want to start to work in that sort of market? So you should ask, is the project a good fit for your business? The first thing you want to do is you want to review the documentation that's been provided in the tender package. Now, I know this can actually be incredibly frustrating and time consuming because general contractors can do this really frustrating thing where instead of just sending you the documents you need to price the job, they send you 1,000 documents that aren't relevant to what you're doing. So part of the difficult thing when reviewing a tender package is actually finding what information is relevant to your price. And the goal of this step should be to understand the scope and outline your methodology. I personally find it really hard just to review things without a goal in mind. Like to read through a document, I think is semi-pointless. So that's why at this stage, there's two things you want to create. You want to create a list of questions and clarifications, and you want to start to develop a methodology or a work breakdown structure. So you really want to decompose and outline the project scope and basically understand all the steps you're going to have to complete the project. The next thing you're going to do is you have to prepare your estimate. Now, I'm not going to cover construction estimating here. I've got quite a few videos on my channel about how to do it, and I'll put a link in the description to a free course on construction estimating. But the estimate is ultimately going to be the key to your offer. The clients are going to make the decision based on cost, and preparing the estimate is also the most time-consuming part of responding to a tender. So here the key is understanding if you're giving a budget price. So if it's not a real project, the client's not going to award the project at the conclusion of the tender period, and you're ultimately doing it just to keep your client happy and to keep yourself active in the project. If they eventually do win it, then you should just submit a budget price. But if it's a proper tender and they're going to award a contract at the end of the procurement phase, then you should put a lot of effort into building up your estimate accurately and offering the best cost you can possibly do. The components of this, it's really going to be spending time doing the estimate build up, developing the methodology, but then you also want to develop an assumptions and exclusions list. So often they'll ask you to price a whole lot of stuff that you don't want to include in your offer. Make sure you clearly document what's included in your offer. As I've said, if it's not a live project and they're not going to award a contract at the end of the procurement phase, they just want feedback from the market for their own feasibility or their own tender they're submitting, then just do a budget estimate. You should have good rates for any items in a bill of quantities. And basically, I would just apply quantities to rates and make sure it's slightly high. Save yourself time and effort. It should be quick and simple, just cost per meter cubed of concrete. And yeah, you just want to avoid wasting a lot of time on a job that might not go ahead. However, if you're very confident, even though it is just a tender price, but you're very confident the job's going to go ahead, and you want to keep in the good books with your client, you can put in more time and effort and do a proper direct cost build-up. It just really depends on the stage of the project and what level of detail you're willing to provide. If it is a firm lump sum price you're doing, you should give it the time and attention it deserves. You want to develop the lowest possible cost you'd be willing to sign a contract on. So you'd be willing to sign a contract to say, I could do the project for that price. You'll have to go through a detailed process. You'll have to prepare a bill of quantities, do any procurement, so get any quotes from your own subcontractors you need, then go through and do your direct cost build-up. So build up your labor, plant, materials, and subcontract costs for each activity, then price your indirects. So what are you going to need to manage the project? Review it and review it and review it. Make sure there's nothing wrong in it. Make sure there's no errors, you haven't missed items, things aren't calculating incorrectly. And then you want to sharpen the price. You want to go through and pull out any extra contingency, anything you're unhappy with, including in there, and then document your assumptions and exclusions. Anything the client's unclear about, anything you're excluding that they've asked you to include, make sure you're clearly documenting that and noting it all down in a letter of offer. Then with your lump sum estimate, you want to get to a stage where you're offering the lowest possible price you can comfortably deliver. Now, the reason I'm saying offering the lowest possible price, it's important to offer a low cost so your client will award the project, but you don't want to give them a price that's too lean and then you go and deliver the project and you lose money. It's better not to win a job than it is to win a job and lose money. Construction, you can lose a lot more money on a project than you can make. So it's always better to be a little bit more cautious than aggressive. And if you find yourself in a market where you're constantly having to price things very, very competitively, it sounds like you're operating in the wrong market. You're competing with people who can do things cheaper than you can do it. And you don't always want to find yourself in a race to the bottom. You want to compete in a market where you can price things more comfortably and still win work. And the final thing I'd say is don't necessarily price what the client's asking you to price. You want to exclude things that don't make sense or they haven't possibly clarified. So you want to give them basically the best possible price you can do, and you don't want to include a whole lot of things in your price that don't make sense to include. Then once you've prepared your estimate, you want to send to them a letter of offer that includes your price, but also qualifies your price. Qualifying your price is really, really important for managing risk. Basically, what you want to do in your letter of offer is you want to convince the client you can do the project, you've thought about everything, you've priced the project, but then you want to give them your assumptions and exclusions. So these are the things you don't know about or you're specifically excluding from your offer that could impact your pricing. With your assumptions list, I like to break it down so every item in the bill of quantities or the pricing schedule, you're detailing your specific assumptions to that item, and then you can also have a general list of assumptions and clarifications. Then you offer them your price, and also in the letter of offer, you want to convince them that you've thought about how to do the project, you're treating it seriously, and then you're addressing the concerns they have. I think that's really, really important that some people send these massive letter of offer that are pretty much like a capability statement, but really what you want to think about is the person at the other end who's going to be reviewing it. What do they actually care about? Maybe all they care about is price. Maybe they care a lot about quality. Maybe they care a lot about program. Maybe they want the works done really, really fast. So what you're trying to do is convince them that you're addressing their concerns. So they look at your letter of offer, they look at the price and they see a competitive price, but they also know that you're thinking about and you're worried about the things that they're worried about. So that's it. That's basically the process of how you respond to a tender. You review the documentation, you prepare your estimate, and then you submit your qualified price. Now that we've covered that, I'm just going to quickly touch on some strategies you can use to be more competitive with your tendering and hopefully increase your win rate, but also win projects that you can deliver profitably. First thing you should be doing is not bidding everything. You shouldn't bid every single project you said. You should be selective about what you choose to pursue. If you tender a whole lot of work and you're not doing it properly, you're just going to waste money. You're going to waste money estimating, you're going to waste money preparing all these submissions, and it's not going to result in profitable projects. At the end of the day, you only want to bid stuff that you have a real chance of winning and that you can win at a price you can eventually deliver profitably. And that all comes down to choosing your market. The market's probably the most important element of whether a construction company makes money. So on any tender you submit, you should always be getting feedback. If you're not cost competitive, if you can't compete, if clients are purely choosing things based on price, then I would recommend not continuing to bid the projects. You should really be bidding stuff you have a chance of winning, but that you can deliver profitably. The next recommendation I'd make is to be realistic about the industry. Construction is a very, very cost competitive industry. Clients are choosing the lowest price. Then the other thing you have to keep at the forefront of your mind is if you underbid a project and you lose money, you're going to lose more money on that project than you could probably make on a profitable project. And even if you tell your client you're losing money, they're not just going to turn around and offer you more money. It's a competitive industry, and in a lot of ways, it's a ruthless industry. Your clients won't care if you lose money on a job. So what I mean by that is when you're preparing your submissions for proper lump sum prices, you should focus on your estimating. You should make sure it's priced correctly. You should review it, and then you should sharpen your pencil. You should provide the leanest possible price you can comfortably deliver the project for. The next thing is understand the tender. You should really understand the package of documentation your clients send you, but then also reach out to your client and understand what they want. Your client might say in their tender that they want all these additional things included in the scope, but they just haven't really thought about it. They want you to include excavation. They want you to include roadworks, but then you'd have to hire in another subcontractor to do it, and it would result in margin. But maybe if you spoke to your client, you'd find out they'd be open to just quoting the concreting package. Really, you want to understand what information the client's providing you, what they want, and what they'd be open to changing, and also the stage of the project it's at. So for example, if you're quoting something, but there's only a 30% design or a 70% design, you can be confident that even if the client is planning on awarding the contract, the first thing there's going to be is a variation when you go from 70% design to the IFC stage. So you should be aware of all these changes. You should understand the context and exactly what you're pricing. The next thing, because you understand the context and understand the tender package, you should factor in opportunity. You should be aware of how the project's going to be delivered, what's likely to change, where there's likely to be variations. And consider including some of these variations at a higher margin to discount your offer price. And obviously this strategy involves way more risk, but it really depends on your ability to understand and be aware of where the change is going to be and prepare for them. For example, if you're pricing off a 70% design and you know there's going to be a change when it goes to IFC, you can be pretty confident that there'll be a variation and actually use some of the additional margin you're going to get on that variation to discount your tender offer. You can also factor in other opportunities like potentially exploring a new methodology, or say you're planning on using or hired-in vehicles. You could have an opportunity to purchase and own your own vehicles and reduce costs. The next thing you should do to increase your win rate and make sure you're winning profitable projects is be really clear about what's included in your offer. You want to highlight your inclusions and your exclusions. And this is important for two reasons. The first is it manages your risk. You're telling the client what you've priced, you're aligning their expectations of the offer with what you're actually offering, and then it's all going to be crystal clear in your letter of offer. When you go to deliver the project, you'll be able to refer back to it and clearly show why things have changed to justify variation. The second reason is if you've got competitors who haven't priced the full scope and that's why their quote is cheaper than yours, your client will be able to will see in your letter of offer and think, oh wow, maybe their price is lower because they haven't included a telehandler to move materials around. It'll help your client with the bid leveling and basically make it easier for them to see you've got a competitive price, and it'll stop your competitors leaving scope gaps. The final thing I'd recommend on doing is understand your clients. You should really understand what they want. Do they want the project finished fast? Do they care about quality, or do they literally just care about price? It's your job as part of the tender process to build a relationship with them, investigate what they actually want so you can tailor the solution you're offering to what they need for the project. You can address their concerns with your offer, and basically you want to leave them feeling that your company is best placed to deliver the project. And you also want to understand how they're going to make the decision. Who are the actual decision makers, and ideally try and speak directly with them. Thanks a lot for watching the video, and I hope you can adopt some of these strategies to win more profitable work. I'm going to put a link in the description of the video to a free training course on construction cost estimating. And if you want help with any of this stuff, if you're a busy small to medium construction business owner and want help outsourcing some of your quantity takeoffs, estimating, contract management, just send me an email and get in contact, and I'd love to see how we can help your business.